Stranded among stars. The warning lights flashed across Dr. Maya Foster's control panel as her research vessel shuddered violently around her. Diagnosis showed critical failure in propulsion systems, she muttered, running her fingers through her dark curls. The small ship, designed for botanical sample collection rather than durability, wasn't going to make it back to Earth. Without immediate repairs, she'd lose not only the vessel, but 3 years of irreplaceable xenobotanical samples. Maya adjusted course toward the nearest outpost, a commercial station known as Helix 9, hovering on the edge of the Andromeda sector. The station appeared through her view screen, a spinning wheel of metal and light against the backdrop of stars. As she approached, the docking mechanisms engaged with a sickening lurch, and her engines finally gave out completely. "This is just perfect," she whispered, gathering her research tablet and emergency credits. The station catered primarily to cargo vessels and mining operations, not scientific expeditions. Finding someone qualified to repair her specialized equipment would be challenging. The customs officer, a bored-looking human, barely glanced at her credentials before waving her through. Maya's heart sank as she surveyed the busy marketplace that served as the station's central hub. Various species bustled about, trading goods and services, but none seemed likely to possess the expertise she needed. After 3 frustrating hours of inquiries, she was directed to a small repair shop tucked between a food synthesizer outlet and a questionable-looking pharmaceutical vendor. The sign simply read, "Technical Solutions," in several languages. Maya pushed open the door and stopped short. A tall figure stood with his back to her, working on what appeared to be a navigation system. His skin was a rich purple hue that seemed to shimmer slightly under the harsh lighting. When he turned, she found herself looking into the most striking amber eyes she'd ever seen, vertical pupils narrowing as they assessed her. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice carrying an unusual harmonic quality that identified him as Zetharian, a species known for their engineering prowess and general distrust of humans. "I need repairs on a research vessel," Maya said, straightening her posture. "Engine failure and possibly damaged navigation systems as well." The alien wiped his hands on a cloth and approached. "You're far from any research outposts, human." His tone made the word sound like an accusation. "My name is Dr. Maya Foster. I'm a xenobotanist with the Interplanetary Research Coalition," she said, extending her credentials. The Zetharian made no move to take them. "I am Nix," he finally responded. "I don't typically work with IRC vessels." He turned away, returning to his previous task. "Please," Maya said, following him. "I have 3 years of irreplaceable samples that will degrade without proper storage systems. My ship's power reserves won't last more than 48 hours. Nix paused, his shoulders tensing. 3 years of work," he repeated quietly. Something in his tone suggested he understood the value of such dedication. "I can pay whatever rate you ask. The IRC will cover emergency repairs." He turned, steadying her face for a long moment. "What kind of research?" "Adaptive botanical systems," she explained. "Plants that can survive in hostile environments. I've discovered several species that could revolutionize terraforming processes." Something flickered in those alien eyes, a hint of interest, perhaps. Recognition? "What sectors?" Maya hesitated. Scientists were typically cautious about sharing research locations. "The Calliope Nebula, primarily." Nix set down his tools abruptly. "Might people have settlements there?" She hadn't expected that connection. The Zetharians were notoriously private about their colony locations. "I'll look at your ship," he said suddenly, "but I make no promises. If the damage is too extensive, you'll need to arrange transport for your samples." Relief washed over Maya. "Thank you," she breathed. "Don't thank me yet," Nix replied, gathering his equipment. "I haven't seen what we're dealing with." As they walked toward the docking bay, Maya noticed how others moved aside for the purple-skinned engineer, his presence commanding a respect she hadn't anticipated. Perhaps she'd found not just a mechanic, but an unexpected ally in this distant corner of space. Neither could know how this chance encounter would alter the course of both their lives. Roots of distrust. Maya followed Nix through the docking bay, her eyes fixed on his broad shoulders as he moved with surprising grace for someone his size. The purple tone of his skin seemed to shift subtly under different lighting conditions, a biological trait she found fascinating from a scientific perspective. "Your vessel is in worse condition than you described," Nix said as they approached her ship. His voice carried that distinctive, harmonic quality that made even criticism sound melodic. "The hull integrity has been compromised in 3 sections, and these modifications are not standard IRC equipment." Maya felt heat rising to her cheeks. "I made some adaptations for my research," she admitted. "The standard environmental controls weren't sufficient for maintaining proper growing conditions." Nix ran his fingers along a panel she had reconfigured. "Amateur work," he muttered. "I'm a botanist, not an engineer," she snapped back. "But those amateur modifications kept my specimens alive for 3 years in deep space." He turned those amber eyes toward her, vertical pupils dilating slightly. "You've been alone on this ship for 3 years." "For most of it, yes," she confirmed. "Research grants don't typically cover additional crew members." Nix activated his diagnostic tool and began scanning the ship's systems. "The propulsion failure is linked to your power redistribution," he concluded after several minutes. "You diverted too much energy to your specimen chambers." "Because they would have died otherwise," Maya defended, crossing her arms. The Zatharian engineer gave her a long look. "Plants over personal safety, an interesting choice." She didn't respond to that observation. Instead, she asked, "How long will repairs take?" Nix consulted his scanner. "At least 7 rotation cycles, perhaps longer if I need to fabricate custom parts." "A week?" Maya's heart sank. "That's too long. Some of my more sensitive specimens won't survive." "That's not my problem," he replied, turning back to the engine access panel. "I thought Zatharians respected scientific pursuits," she said. The comment was calculated. She knew from her research that his people prided themselves on their contributions to interstellar knowledge. Nix's skin darkened, a sign of emotional response she recognized from xenobiology briefings. "We do," he said tersely, "when conducted ethically." "What's that supposed to mean?" He straightened to his full height, towering over her. "Your IRC took samples from our settlement worlds without permission 3 standard years ago. Destroy the sacred grove in the process." Maya blinked in surprise. "I had no knowledge of that." "Of course not," he said, bitterness evident in his tone. "Researchers rarely concern themselves with the consequences of their actions." "I have proper authorization for all my collection sites," she insisted, pulling up documentation on her tablet. "All ethical guidelines were followed." Nix barely glanced at the screen. "Your organization's definition of ethical and mine differ considerably." The tension between them was interrupted by a sudden blaring alarm. Maya recognized the station's emergency signal. "What's happening?" she asked. Nix was already moving toward the exit. "Atmosphere fluctuation. Follow me. We need to get to a secure section." They rushed through corridors now filling with concerned station residents. Maya struggled to keep pace with Nix's longer strides. When they reached a sealed chamber, he pressed his palm against a security panel, granting them access. "You have clearance," she observed as the door slid shut behind them. "I maintain critical systems here," he explained, moving to a control panel. The station's readings appeared, showing dangerous pressure changes in several sections. "This is beyond normal fluctuation," Maya noted, looking at the data. "This looks deliberate." Nix's expression darkened. "Sabotage." Without thinking, Maya moved to a secondary console, her fingers flying across the interface. "I can help if you give me access. I worked on environmental systems before specializing in botany." Nix hesitated, then authorized her terminal. Maya immediately began isolating affected sectors. "The pattern is systematic," she reported. "Each failure triggers another in sequence." For 20 tense minutes, they worked in perfect synchronization, identifying compromised systems and implementing containment protocols. The harmony of their cooperation stood in contrast to their earlier friction. "We've stabilized the primary ring," Nix finally announced, "but we've lost pressure in cargo section 4. "No casualties reported," Maya confirmed, checking the life sign monitors. "That's something, at least." Nix studied her with new interest. "You have experience with emergency protocols." "I've spent more time on remote stations than I care to count," she admitted with a small smile. "Research doesn't always take you to comfortable places." The Zatharian nodded slowly. "Perhaps I misjudged you, Dr. Foster." Maya corrected. "And perhaps I misjudged you too, Nix." A station security officer appeared at the door requesting Nix's assistance with damage assessment. When he departed, he surprised her by saying, "I'll begin repairs on your ship tonight. Some of your specimens might be worth saving after all." Alone in the control room, Maya found herself smiling despite the circumstances. Crisis had a way of revealing character, and she'd glimpsed something in the purple-skinned engineer that intrigued her beyond professional interest, a depth and principle she hadn't expected. What she couldn't know was that Nix, too, was reassessing his initial impressions of the human botanist. The way she'd unhesitatingly joined him in addressing the emergency with competence and calm had challenged his preconceptions. Perhaps not all humans were as thoughtless as he had believed. Perhaps this one in particular deserved a second look. Blossoming connection. 4 days into the repairs, Maya found herself spending more time watching Nick's work than attending to her own research. His methodical approach to each system fascinated her, almost as much as the way his purple skin caught the light when he moved. "You're staring again, Dr. Foster," he said, without looking up from the power coupling he was recalibrating. "Maya," she corrected, for perhaps the 10th time. "And I'm observing. There's a difference. I am a scientist, after all." Nix's lips curved slightly upward, the closest thing to a smile she'd seen from him. "Is my biology that interesting to you?" "More your technique," she replied, though the question made her suddenly aware of the heat in her cheeks. "Your understanding of how systems interact is impressive." He connected 2 components, and the panel illuminated with a soft blue glow. "Systems are simple, predictable, follow the rules, and they work precisely as designed." "Unlike people?" Maya offered. Nix looked up, meeting her gaze. "Unlike people," he agreed. Their conversation was interrupted by a beeping from Maya's tablet. She checked the alert and her expression fell. "Something wrong?" he asked. "One of my rarest specimens is showing signs of cellular deterioration," she explained. "It's a symbiotic fungus from the outer reaches of the Calliope Nebula. I've been trying to stabilize it for months." Nix set down his tools. "Let me see." She hesitated before handing over her research. This wasn't just data, it was years of her life's work. To her surprise, he studied the information with genuine interest. "The environmental parameters you're using are incorrect," he finally said. "This fungus shares characteristics with a species that grows near our settlements. It requires trace amounts of selenium to maintain cellular cohesion." Maya blinked. "Are you certain?" Nix nodded. "I may focus on mechanical systems now, but I was raised in our agricultural division." She hadn't expected that connection. "Come with me," she said impulsively, leading him to the specimen chamber aboard her ship. The fungus specimen glowed faintly in its containment unit, resembling a cluster of translucent azure crystals. Nix approached, almost reverently. "I've never seen this variant before." His voice softened, losing its usual edge. "The color pattern is unique." Maya adjusted the environmental controls, following his suggestion. The effect was almost immediate. The fungus's luminescence brightened, its structure stabilizing before their eyes. "That's incredible," she breathed. "How did you know?" "We have a saying among our people," Nix replied, still watching the specimen. "Life finds harmony when given the proper conditions." Their eyes met over the container, and something shifted between them, a recognition of shared passion despite their different disciplines. That evening, Nix surprised her by inviting her to his quarters. "I want to show you something," he said simply. His living space was sparse, but for one wall covered entirely with what appeared to be living art, a tapestry of bioluminescent plants arranged in intricate patterns that pulsed gently with light. "It's beautiful," Maya whispered, approaching the display. "My memory garden," Nix explained. "Each plant represents someone important, a Zatharian tradition." He touched one delicate frond, and it brightened in response. "My mother," he said. My father. His fingers moved to different specimens as he named family members, colleagues, teachers. And that empty space? Maya asked, pointing to a corner of the display. For future connections, he said, his voice quieter. Their eyes met again, and neither looked away. Later that night, they shared a meal prepared in the Zathrian tradition. Maya discovered that Nyx possessed an unexpected talent for cooking. The flavors were unlike anything she had experienced before, intense and complex. "You're full of surprises," she told him, accepting a glass of something that tasted like cinnamon and starlight. "As are you," he responded. "I've never met a human so dedicated to understanding rather than merely collecting." "Is that how you see other humans? Merely collecting?" Nyx considered her question. "My experiences have been limited and mostly negative," he admitted. "But you've shown me something different." After dinner, they found themselves standing close, her research tablet forgotten on the table as they discussed the potential applications of her discoveries. His hand brushed against hers, perhaps by accident, perhaps not, and Maya felt an unexpected current between them. The purple of his skin seemed deeper in the dimmed light, his amber eyes luminous as they studied her face. "Maya." He said her name like a question. "Yes," she answered, though he hadn't actually asked anything. His fingers traced the line of her jaw, warm despite their alien color. Maya found herself leaning into his touch. "What are we doing?" she whispered. "Finding harmony," he murmured, before his lips met hers. The kiss was tentative at first, an exploration of unknown territory. His lips were cooler than a human's, but the sensation sent warmth spreading through her body. When they parted, Maya's scientific mind noted absurdly that her heart rate had increased by approximately 30%. "This wasn't in my research parameters," she said, with a nervous laugh. "Nor in my repair contract," he replied, his deep voice carrying a new warmth. When he kissed her again, it was with greater confidence, his arms encircling her waist, pulling her against him. Maya's hands moved to his shoulders, feeling the unfamiliar texture of his skin through the thin fabric of his shirt. The differences between them suddenly seemed less important than what they shared, a curiosity, a dedication, a willingness to discover. They moved to a sleeping area, their exploration becoming more intimate. Nyx's purple skin glowed faintly in the darkness as Maya's hands traced the contours of his chest. His touch was both gentle and certain, as clothing was discarded and their bodies pressed together, finding a rhythm that transcended their different biologies. In the aftermath, as they lay entwined, Maya watched the living wall pulse in patterns that seemed to match her heartbeat. "Is this what you meant by harmony?" she asked, her head resting against his chest. Nyx's fingers traced patterns along her spine. "It's a beginning," he answered, "and like all good scientific discoveries, it requires further investigation." She smiled against his skin, looking forward to continuing their research. Storm of separation. Maya awoke to the soft pulsing light of Nyx's living wall, his arm draped protectively across her waist. The past 3 days had passed in a blur of repair work, shared meals, and increasingly passionate nights. The ship was nearly functional again, but Maya found herself less eager to leave than she'd expected. Her communication panel chimed insistently, interrupting the peaceful moment. When she activated it, Commander Santiago's stern face appeared on screen. "Dr. Foster, we've been attempting to contact you for days," his voice sharp with disapproval. "Your research deadline passed without submission." "I've been delayed by mechanical issues, sir," Maya explained, sitting up. The commander's eyes narrowed as he noted her surroundings and state of undress. "Your location tracker shows you're still at Helix 9, he continued. "The situation has changed. The Zatharian Conclave has filed a formal complaint against the IRC, claiming unauthorized sample collection in their territories. All human researchers are being recalled immediately." Maya felt Nyx stir behind her, his body tensing at the commander's words. "This isn't related to my work," she protested. "I have all proper authorizations." "Irrelevant," Santiago snapped.
Diplomatic channels are breaking down. We're sending an extraction team. Your priority is securing your samples and research data. The vessel can be abandoned if necessary. The extraction team arrives in 14 hours. Be ready, Foster." The screen went dark, leaving an uncomfortable silence. "You're leaving," Nick said, his voice carefully neutral. Maya turned to face him. "This diplomatic situation has nothing to do with me." "Doesn't it?" he replied, rising from the bed. His skin had darkened to a deep violet, a sign she now recognized indicated emotional distress. "Your organization is once again taking what it wants with no regard for consequences." "That's not fair," she protested. "My research could benefit both our species." Nix gathered his clothing. "Any benefits would go to humans first. The IRC's priorities are well documented." They argued as Maya dressed, his accusations growing pointed, her defenses more desperate. When he suggested her interest in him might have been merely another form of sample collection, she slapped him hard across the face. "For someone so brilliant, you can be incredibly stupid," she hissed, tears forming. "I cared for you." "Past tense already," he noted bitterly. "That was quick." Maya stormed out, returning to her nearly repaired ship to find the final systems coming online. Nix had completed the critical work despite their argument. She began preparing her specimens for transport, working methodically through her anger and hurt. Hours later, as she cataloged her final samples, an emergency alert blared through the station. Helix 9 was moving into lockdown. Zatharian authorities had arrived and were detaining all human occupants. Maya's heart raced as she realized what this meant. Caught between approaching IRC extraction forces and hostile Zatharian officials. The diplomatic breakdown had escalated faster than anyone anticipated. A shadow appeared in her doorway. Nick stood there, his expression unreadable. "You need to leave now," he said. "I thought you'd be happy to see me detained," she replied bitterly. He moved closer. "I was wrong to accuse you." His voice softened. "We were both caught in something larger than ourselves." A station-wide announcement indicated that all docking bays were being sealed. In minutes, escape would be impossible. "You have two choices," Nick said urgently. "Leave now with your research, or stay and face detention." "What about us?" she asked. He touched her face gently. "That depends on what you value more, your career or what we've discovered together." Hybrid hearts. The IRC extraction team found Maya's ship gone from its docking bay when they arrived at Helix 9. All attempts to contact Dr. Foster failed. Commander Santiago logged her as missing, presumed detained by Zatharian authorities. A diplomatic incident seemed inevitable. 6 months later, on a remote outpost at the edges of the Calliope Nebula, a small research station had been established. Unlike typical human or Zatharian designs, this facility blended elements of both architectures. Inside, Maya adjusted environmental controls for a new specimen, while Nix calibrated their communications array. "Did Santiago accept your proposal?" she asked, checking readings on her tablet. "He sent approval this morning," Nix confirmed. "The Joint Research Initiative is officially sanctioned, the first IRC Zatharian collaborative project in a decade." Maya smiled. "It only took us threatening to publish our findings independently." Nix moved behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Sometimes the best path forward requires a willingness to step outside established parameters," he murmured against her neck. She turned in his embrace. "I believe that's what got us here in the first place." Their decision to leave together had been impulsive. Taking Maya's research and Nix's technical expertise, they'd established an independent operation. Eventually, both sides recognized the value of their work as tensions between their peoples gradually eased. "I received a message from the conclave," Nix said. "Our union request has been processed. The ceremony can proceed whenever we're ready." Maya's heart quickened. "Are you certain your people will accept a human in such a role?" He touched his forehead to hers. "The traditional bonding words apply perfectly to us. Two systems finding optimal function through integration." She laughed. "That's possibly the most romantic thing a Zatharian could say." His amber eyes held hers with intensity. "You've adapted to my culture. I've adapted to yours. Together, we've created something entirely new. Isn't that what your research was always about? Finding life that thrives in unexpected places?" Their lips met in a kiss that had become both familiar and thrilling. The initial strangeness of their differences had evolved into appreciation for their complementary natures. That night, as they lay together in their shared living quarters, the wall garden Nix had installed pulsed with patterns that matched their heartbeats. A new specimen occupied the once empty space, representing their connection. Maya traced the luminescent fronds with her fingertips. "What happens next?" she asked, her head resting against his purple chest. Nix considered. "I believe the appropriate scientific response is we continue our research. The most interesting discoveries often come after years of dedicated study." Maya smiled against his skin. "I look forward to a lifetime of investigation." Outside their window, the binary stars of the Calliope Nebula cast multicolored light across the landscape where their experimental garden grew, earth plants besides Zatharian varieties, creating hybrid species that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. A perfect metaphor for what they'd built together. Two different worlds finding harmony in the vast expanse of stars where once only division had existed.